Okay, so next I want to go over variables. So let's go over to the variables constants tab and grab this block right here, the set integer variable block. So I want to say before we get into changing up our code that there's a lot to be said about variables in programming. I'm going to kind of brush over most of it, but kind of briefly give you an idea of what the variables are doing in our code and in programming in general. So in mathematics, for those of you who are this far along in your mathematics career, you generally consider your variable in a mathematics equation to be this unknown. So it's just some unknown number. It's usually represented by the letter X or Y or something like that. But it's some unknown number, and you're eventually trying to solve for that variable. You're trying to boil it down to just some number, like, say, X equals 2, X equals 3, something of that nature. In programming, variables are considered a little bit differently. So here's the way I would like us to think about variables going forward. A variable represents some location that you can store information in. In this case, since it's an integer variable, I can store a number, an integer, inside of that variable. And whenever I call that variable in the future and I ask about that variable will then tell me the piece of information, the number that I have given it before. So if I'm looking at this, the first thing I have is the integer variable name, which is a bit long. So I'm going to change this to button, because our variable is going to be related back to our button. I'm also going to clone this real quick. I'm going to have two of them, and I'm going to put one in each section of this if-else block. So now what I want to do is I want to change one of these values. Let's say this is the section of the code where the button has been pressed. So if the button has been pressed, not only do I want that LED to light up, but I want the button variable to be a 1. So I want that piece of information that the button variable is storing to be 1. And if not, if the button has not been pressed, the light is off, and that button variable is 0. So now we also have this internal process happening inside of our Barnabas noggin that's keeping track of whether the button's been pushed or not, as well as this light show that kind of gives us a really good indicator. The problem at the moment is that we can't actually see that variable happening. We can't see whether it is a 1 or a 0 that's being stored inside of the noggins. So we want some way for that information to be read back to us. So we're going to be using what's called the serial monitor. Go to the white communications tab here and grab this block here that says serial print ln. We're going to put it right here. And we got like a little message that we can change to whatever we want. I'm going to say like button equals, sure. So this doesn't matter so much. You can also even get rid of this if you don't want to, or if you don't want it around. Next, I want us to grab this glue block right here. So notice that there's two different glue blocks. I'm going to take the sharper glue block, the one that has the sharp corner, because I want to put the button variable inside it. So once again, I just cloned it. And I'm going to go ahead and upload this code. I'm going to cancel. Is it actually being uploaded? It is. All right, cool. So nothing has really changed. If we wanted to go back to our circuit and press the button a few times, no change in behavior so far. But if we click on this little window that says serial monitor, I can see down the side here I just have button equals 0, and it's populating really, really quickly. Now you can't see me doing this, so just take my word for it. I'm going to press the button. So you notice how it turned to button equals 1, and then if I release the button, it turns to button equals 0. So the number that's being stored inside button is changing whether or not the button's pressed or not. Which is exactly what it should be doing, right? So if the button's pressed, it's going to say, okay, this button variable is now 0. And then maybe when it's done there, it comes back around and I'm not pressing the button anymore, and it reassigns the value of 0 to button, and it gives us that instead. Now, I will say this is kind of making me dizzy because it's going by way faster than I'd like it to. So let's kind of slow this down a bit. Let's see if I can have some reasonable delay. Let's say a fourth of a second. Sure. Fourth of a second, why not? Upload, upload, upload. Alright. There we go, this is a little better. Little easier for me. Awesome. Alright, sweet. So, yeah. That's all I have to say about the variables. I will also go ahead and say you can have fun with this serial print as well. If you want to have individualized messages for whether or not the button has been pressed. So you could do something like this. The button is on, is pressed. Sure. So the button is pressed would go here, right? And then you could say down here, the button is not pressed. And so you can have actual individualized messages based on the state of your button. Are we done uploading? Yes, we are. All right. Oh, whoops. I took that, I took the delay out. You get the idea, though. All right. Let's move on.